Welcome and thank you for tuning in. As you can see, it's a fantastic snowy afternoon here in North Yorkshire. The first lot of proper snow that we've had this winter, to be honest. So yeah, really quite excited to be here. Having said that, I'm not entirely convinced that I've come to the right woodland to take advantage of it, but time will tell, I'm sure. But the reason why I've come here is because it's full of these beautifully old, characterful, scraggly oak trees. Now these trees date back about 700 years, so there's a lot of history and a lot of stories to be told, I'm sure. It's a privately owned woodland, so I'm very, very privileged to have access to this place, so I'm keen to do it justice. And if it doesn't work today, I'll definitely be back, because it's a bit of a long-term project, this place. There's not a huge amount of time. There's about two and a half hours of reasonable daylight left, so we better get cracking. In all honesty, this is proving to be a bit more challenging than I expected. I mean, everything looks fantastic, it really does, but I've been struggling with some of the oak trees. The birch certainly lend themselves well to these conditions because of their delicate form and a lighter trunk, whereas some of the oak trees are proving quite difficult because they have some very dark and bold shapes, which is quite a pleasant contrast with the snow, but in some cases it's just a little bit too much. So I've been struggling to isolate any particular trees because, I mean, I do a lot of my photography is in the depth of the woodland, but at this time of year in the snow, I do like the kind of more simplistic view. Having said that, this view behind me here is a bit more complex, a bit more kind of true to woodland photography. There are some very dark shapes in here, but there's enough snow because of the direction that the snow is falling, the way it's laid on these branches on these oak trees behind me. I think it's quite pleasant, and I can keep it quite high key when I process it, just to keep some of that shadow detail up so there's not too much harsh contrast in there. But there's some really cool shapes. The forms higher up in the tree are really fantastic as the snow starts to layer up and get thicker than the branches themselves. So we've got a series of trees here, all growing up, meeting in the middle, anchored nicely with the base of the trees and a couple of boulders in the centre just to fill up some of that white space. And then we've just got a bit of a recession in the trees, and then we've got a very, very vague view to the opposite valley behind, just to give that point of space within the centre of the image, which is something that I'm quite often drawn to. So yeah, it's quite pleasant. I mean, I've been experimenting with different apertures, different shutter speeds, probably going for something around about a 30th of a second so that we can see a little bit of that movement in the snow, which is going to add that feeling of texture to the scene, and all helps to contribute towards the overall feeling, I think. But we have had some fantastic thick flakes of snow. They've just thinned out a little bit now. But yeah, it's beautiful. Apart from the fact it's very, very difficult to walk through. That's been quite a challenge. But yeah, see what you make of this one. Quite pleasant, but yeah, quite keen to find something where I'm isolating a tree and get something that's very calming. Would be quite nice. think the experience of photography absolutely eclipses all the challenges of shooting in conditions like this, such as trudging through the awkward terrain, gear getting soaking wet, and batteries going flat incredibly quickly. I think I'll have to keep the B-roll to a minimum. But it's made even more fantastic when you find beautiful subjects such as this one. This fabulous oak tree which is leaning away from an old stone wall that's not really serving any purpose within the landscape anymore. And because it's leaning away, it's exposing this beautiful broad trunk where all the snow's gathering on there, so that's just helping to simplify some of those bold shapes. And then we can see the opposite hillside as well, with a scattering of trees over there, and the distribution of trees is helping to frame the image as well. And that's just giving a nice feeling of space, adding to the atmosphere and adding another layer as well, so a bit of depth in the image. So yeah, we're using the base of the oak tree and the wall just to anchor the composition. The gesture of the tree leaning over to where we've got the space in the distance is quite a nice feature too. So again, experimenting with shutter speeds, capturing a little bit of that movement. But yeah, I quite like that. Lots of complexity in all the branches, which just look absolutely beautiful with that thickening layer of snow. But yeah, Meg's enjoying it. She absolutely loves the snow. I don't think there's a huge amount of time left until it starts to come in dark, and I've probably got a bit of a difficult drive home. But hopefully I'll get one more image in. It's not snowing quite as heavily now, but there is some low cloud in the distance, so that's starting to add a bit of atmosphere. So I thought what was quite fitting with the mood was to photograph this dead tree here. And it's quite simple, to be honest. I've tried a couple of things. I've tried a vertical image to bring the full height of the tree, because there's some really nice shapes and angles, and a bit of an interaction with the other dead tree on the left hand side. So where this branch comes up to the left, then forks downwards, I've tried to connect that up with the dead tree over on the left hand side. By doing that, it meant that the big tree over on the right, whoops, snow falling off the branches. By doing that, it meant that the big oak tree on the right hand side was starting to merge slightly into the dead tree, but I kind of didn't mind that so much, because there's another tree right in the far distance, and it was just providing a little frame for that. It's only a very small detail, but I did quite like it. But then I tried a horizontal image, which actually cropped off the top of the dead tree and concentrated more on some of its dynamic shapes, and then brought in a little bit more left to right. I separated the dead tree from the large oak tree over on the right hand side there, brought in a little bit more over to the left so we could see some of those trees disappearing off into the distance on the hillside there. So yeah, it was quite pleasant. I mean, honestly, I'm not feeling massively excited. I mean, you know, brilliant being here wandering around with Meg. Not feeling massively excited about the photographs. I think they'll turn out quite nicely. But I think overall, I think there's some locations that might have suited these conditions. But that's the thing with photography. You've got to come and experience all the woodlands in all the seasons, all the conditions, as much as you possibly can to know what works and what doesn't. And there's definitely nice images. I'm sure there's wonderful images to be made here on a snowy day, but I've not found anything yet that has got me incredibly excited. But yeah, we'll see how they turn out anyway. But yeah, not much longer left now. You probably see that the light's starting to drop a little. Meg's probably hungry as well as, you know, I'm hungry too. But yeah, we'll plod around a little bit more. Right, that's it, time to head home I think, because it's coming in quite dark and I've probably got a bit of a treacherous drive home, to be honest. But yeah, I enjoyed that. It was much more difficult than I expected. I'm not really sure why. I think maybe I was feeling a bit rusty after not being out much recently. But it was still very valuable to be out and experience this woodland for the first time in snow. And like I said earlier, this is a private woodland which the landowners very kindly let me come and go as I please to photograph his trees. But if you ever do come across something which you realise is private land but looks quite tasty for photography, then I would certainly encourage you not to jump the fence and start taking pictures, because I don't think the landowner would appreciate that. But what I did, I did a bit of research, found out who owned this, and just went and knocked on his door, introduced myself, reassured him that I would respect his land, and I just really wanted to be there to enjoy it, photograph it and document some of the fabulous ancient oak trees that are here. And what I also did, I said, look, if I make a really nice image which I feel is representative of the place and does it justice, then obviously you can have a print for free. And what you'll probably find is that the landowner is probably quite excited by the fact that somebody wants to go and photograph their land. So if you just build up a bit of a trusting relationship, then you know, you could end up in a situation like I've got here, where I can just come and go and then have the privilege of enjoying this space all on my own. It's fantastic. But yeah, so very, very thankful and fortunate for that. Right, that's it. Hope you've enjoyed this one. I better get going, but thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.